What's up everyone, CO here with week 1 of the NES Season 5. This week we are taking on the Foxborough Ninetales, coached by Sunny. We frankly have a pretty uphill battle this game, if I do say so for myself. I'm going to try to start things off a little bit differently for these battles and kind of do like an actual quote-unquote team builder. As usual, I'll have a timestamp or something to when the actual battle starts and when I start talking about it, so feel free to follow that if you don't really give a shit about my prep for this game and just want to see what happens. But spoilers, I won't be like previewing all of my sets in depth because I decided to do it this way this season. I normally end up spending forever talking about the team anyway, so I might as well show you guys a little bit more of the team building process. So Sunny's team is off to the right, obviously, and the team I'm bringing today is off to the left. Sunny's team is fast as fuck, and I was very tempted to bust out the triple trick room team this like opening the season, but I decided to try to kind of mix it up a little bit more. The 6 that I brought were kind of bulky offense leaning towards hyper offense, which I kind of wanted my team to have that mode, as well as being more of like a bulkier, like, I don't want to say stall team, but like it is a bulkier team. So the plan was basically to take all the hits from everything on her team, hopefully, and then just kind of be able to bulk it out and then clean up with a bunch of priority in the end. So gonna go ahead and get into it. First off, we have Adamant Choice Scarf Zygarde, 1000 Arrows, Extreme Speed, Outrage, and Zen Headbutt. Basically, Zygarde at +1 speed actually manages to outspeed everything on her team that's unboosted. I'm expecting her to have at least one Choice Scarfer and probably priority with Dragonite, and I'm assuming Mamoswine. I don't know why she wouldn't have priority with but like if she's bringing Mamoswine, but yeah. So Extreme Speed's there to kind of boost past that and just be able to hit damage. 1000 Arrows is a very spammable move, especially against her team because she has 4 times ground weaknesses. And then Outrage and Zen Headbutt are basically just there for once Diancie's down, I could spam Outrage. And Zen Headbutt, I didn't really need a 4th move, so I just decided to kind of give it Zen Headbutt because she does have a couple of fighting types. As well as the Salazzle if I felt inclined to lock myself into that. Odds are I'm just going to spam 1000 Arrows against that thing anytime it's in, but that's okay. So next up is Ferrothorn. Kind of more of a support Ferrothorn, I guess, as you can see, with Thunder Wave, Gyro Ball, Stealth Rock, and Leech Seed. Basically the goal is for this thing to get up rocks, so Dragonite's multi-scale is broken, as well as just doing basic chip damage. Her hazard removal isn't the best because it's basically just like Defog Aerodactyl and Mega DNC Magic Bounce, and Dragonite Defog, I guess, if you really wanted to, but nobody's running Dragonite as a defogger like ever. So Thunderwave is basically meant to counter said Dragonite because I expect that to kind of be one of her main counters to Ferrothorn at that point, obviously assuming Salazzle's dead at that point. Gyro Ball is meant to counter Mega DNC if I'm in against Mega DNC and she predicts me to set up rocks and just go for a Gyro Ball. It's a pretty easy OHKO. And then Stealth Rock and Leech Seed are just there, obviously, for rocks and recovery. Next up is probably, I guess, the gimmickiest set of the week, I guess. We have Technician, Fistplate, Hitmontop with Mach Punch, Bullet Punch, Rock Slide, and Bulldoze. If you don't know, Bulldoze is a base 60 ground type move with 100% chance to lower speed. Technician boosts that to base 90, so it's actually only slightly weaker than Earthquake and gives 100% chance to drop speed. Hitmontop's not the fastest, but I did invest a decent amount of speed into it, and it is base 70, so basically after, if I predict correctly and get a Bulldoze off, I should be able to outspeed a lot of... Well, honestly, like I would need more than one because her team's super fast, but but the plan was basically just to have Bulldoze here as a switch into either Salazzle or Alolan Raichu, both of which are pretty good against Hitmontop. So catch it on a Bulldoze and then potentially do some chip damage after. Both of my priorities aren't really good against the super fast things on the team, but they are good against Mamoswine, which I'm pretty terrified of. Next up is Starmie, who did a ridiculous amount in practice as my fastest thing, as well as having 2 very good stabs against her team. Psychium Z Psychic as well as Dazzling Gleam for Lipard, basically. Ice Beam and Scald. Ice Beam's obviously for Dragonite, and then Scald's for the ground weak, or for Mamoswine, as well as Salazzle if I don't feel like locking myself into Psychic, I guess. The only situation I wouldn't do that is if she brings both Salazzle and Lipard, which seems kind of unlikely. But Sunny also does know me well enough to know to build unlikely sets for me, and it'll work. Next up is red card Mimikyu with Swords Dance, Shadow Sneak, Drain Punch, and Play Rough, max speed, and then max attack, obviously. I didn't go super crazy with the EV spreads this week because I'm still trying to feel out my stuff. I'll get a little bit more in-depth about it next time, because honestly that's something I kind of wish I would have done a little bit differently this time. Like, I speed crept stuff, but it wasn't like hardcore creeping or anything. But basically the plan for this, obviously Sunny has a bunch of setup and stuff, so the plan is to basically come in with a free hit thanks to Disguise, use the red card, which, if you don't know, basically means if I survive the hit, the person who attacks me is forced to switch out to some random thing. Really cool item, especially with Disguise, because it means I don't take the hit. So basically someone hits me and then I just send them out of the battle for a second. The plan ideally is to do this on a free switch, get a free Swords Dance up, and then whatever comes in has to face a +2 Mimikyu. Ideally that's what will happen. If not, Mimikyu's decent enough to be able to hit hard. It's only base 90 attack, so it's not super strong, but it does help a little bit here. And then finally we have Swellow. I went with a Flame Orb Gut set because I figured it may catch her off guard. Truth be told, Swellow actually has a pretty terrible matchup this week, so I kind of expect her to not expect me to bring it, I guess. I went back and forth in prep on if I should basically have Snorlax with Thick Fat to be able to help me out with Mamoswine, or Swellow with Flame Orb to be able to kind of just pick some stuff off late game. It was a pretty even 50-50, honestly, but since I went with all of my practice games with Swellow, I felt a little bit more comfortable with it. Steel Wing with this set allows me to Oko Mega Diancie, Brave Bird spam against all of her fighting types, Facade against her normal resist, or her non-normal resists. Honestly, she actually has a pretty decent amount of normal resists, so this is just kind of more meant to do like decent damage if I need it to. As well as quick attack if I just need a little bit of chip for priority and stuff before I die or whatever. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this team. I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to the battle now, and as you will see, she brought a pretty interesting team. No Mega Diancie is a little unfortunate because I did prep pretty heavy for it. Seeing Salazzle is also a little bit unfortunate because I didn't prep for that as much. Like, I know she really liked it, but I was focused on a lot of other stuff on her team, to be perfectly honest. The rest of the stuff I expected pretty much, like, full stop. So basically Salazzle over Mega Diancie was kind of like the big shocker here, I guess. So obviously I want to get rocks up as soon as possible because she has 3 things that are rock weak, and then 2 things that resist it, honestly, but like I don't really care about the fighting types resisting it. But I know better than lead Ferrothorn against Sunny, because she's either gonna need lead Mamoswine and like superpower the fuck out of me or something, or she's gonna go ahead and just try to lead Dragonite or something and set up right away. And if she's Lumberry or something like that and gets a free +1 against the Ferrothorn that's just sitting there, it's not really gonna end that well. So my lead for this week, as odd as it kind of is actually Starmie. The plan in practice, and it seemed to work pretty well, is to just kind of like nuke whatever I need to nuke, I guess. If she switches out Fearing Me, I get an analytic boost, which means my hit does even more damage. And since she didn't bring Lipard, that means I'm basically free to Z-Psychic with impunity, more or less. Unfortunately, she leads Salazzle, so right away I'm already in a pretty intense 50-50. Like, you wouldn't expect turn 1 to be a pretty like deciding factor of this game, I guess. But I ran some calcs and realized that there's nothing really that the Salazzle can do that could actually kill me right here. At least with like a normal move, I guess. Like, if it's a boosting item or if it's a Z move, Sludge Wave could potentially kill me. It's still a roll at that point, but it's a roll that's like extremely heavy in her favor, especially since I don't have like the most I actually don't think I have any health investments in it. It's not a roll. But basically, I was caught in a 50-50 here of if she's Z-move. If she is Z-move, is she going to go straight for it right here? If she's not Z-move, what do I switch out into, really? Because, like, my switch into this, like, predicting poison Z-move would be Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn's obviously weak to the fire-type stab that Salazzle is. So, like, it would basically just be, like, another pivot out after that. I don't know if she has HP Ice. Like, Zygarde would be a good middle ground and obviously be able to scare her out right away. But if she predicts that and goes for the HP Ice and she's like Specs or something, Zygarde could take a pretty decent amount of damage from it. So, like, as you can see, her leading Salazzle is a really good, like, counter lead to my counter lead, I guess. Because obviously, me leading Ferrothorn wouldn't have been a good idea anyway, because she just would have flamethrowed me or Fire Blast or whatever. I also don't want the Salazzle to be a nasty plot Focus Sash lead, and as I switch out into my quote-unquote counter for it, it gets a free +2 and then is able to kill me. So, all of that said, I decided to stay in here and just fire off a Z Psychic, because if she switches, something dies. Like, it's just that, like Dragonite's the only thing that doesn't die if it switches in thanks to multi-scale, and then I just fire off an Ice Beam after that anyway, and if she switches, that's whatever. She's still on the back foot trying to pivot around to Starmie that, like, frankly, can 6-0 her team if it's in the right situation. Like, it can't take the hit, but it can outspeed what it needs to outspeed, theoretically, and potentially take a hit from Aerodactyl. Fortunately, as you can probably gather by how much I preface that being a Z-move, it's a Z-move. She is a full Jolly Salazzle, which means she outspeeds me ever so slightly. I was full speed Starmie to be able to speed tie with an Ambipom lead in case she brought that. I didn't really expect her to bring Ambipom, but I did want to prep for it just in case. But unfortunately, Salazzle's able to take out Starmie turn 1. Turn 1 definitely goes to Sunny because I lost that 50-50. I was hovering over Ferrothorn for a pretty long time before making the move, and unfortunately I just made the wrong one, honestly. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go Zygarde now because I'm Choice Scarfed, so I outspeed. I know she's Z-move. Like, at this point, Salazzle's kind of done its job already. Like, it could be here to potentially try to kill Ferrothorn or something like that, but overall, like, it's already done its job. And since it pretty comfortably outspeeds me here, if it does have HP Ice, it can go for it, do a decent amount of chip damage, and then, like, anything can pick it off. Since I'm Scarf, though, I'm able to outspeed, and Zygarde gets its first kill of the season, which is nice. Mamoswine comes in and immediately scares me out, because that's how this game's going to be going. That damage right there shows me 100% that this Mamoswine's choice banded, because there's zero universe in which it does that much unless it's choice banded. Like, that was like a solid mid-roll from choice band, and nothing else could even touch that. So the good news is that I know whatever she's going out into here is not Mamoswine. Like, she's not going to stay in, take another knockoff that's not going to do anything, let me either get up rocks or Leech Seed stall or whatever. So I'm free to fire off a Thunder Wave here, which is what I go ahead and do. Hariyama comes in, which is kind of annoying because I'm already afraid that I just gave it a Guts boost with Paralysis instead of actually getting to chip it down with a burn. I guess technically a Paralysis is still better than a burn if it's a Guts Hariyama anyway, because there's a chance of Paralysis rather than just letting that thing punch you over and over again. But honestly, I was hoping for either Arrow, Keldeo, or Dragonite when I fired off that Thunder Wave. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and switch out. I assume she's either going to go for a close combat or a fire move, so I just play it safe and go Mimikyu because I already over-predicted this game by, like, staying in when I knew I shouldn't have. Goes for the Fire Punch, breaks Disguise, and does not activate my red card. So I want to explain that because I showed you before the battle that I had a red card. It did not activate because it turns out, like, I kind of figured this out right then because I had Hariyama at one point also. Turns out this Hariyama is actually Sheer Force and not Guts or Thick Fat, which is super interesting because basically by Sunny going for Fire Punch right there, she broke my Disguise, but because Sheer Force activated on the burn percentage chance from Fire Punch, it also negated my red card. Because Sheer Force is a stupid ability and it does that. It also works that way for, like, Golisopod's emergency exit or something. So if you hit or like if you're like a Nidoking or something, you go for a Thunderbolt against like a Lissapod. If it brings it down below the 50% and it lives, it just stays in because Sheer Force like nullifies the ability or whatever. So it's interesting that it still works for Disguise, but it breaks the red card, because I was actually kind of counting on being able to switch out this Hariyama into something and hopefully live, I guess. Like, even if Mamoswine comes in with a Choice Banded, I guess a knockoff could potentially kill, but either way, Hariyama obviously doesn't switch out. So at this point, I'm running my calcs and realize that a Play Rough doesn't actually kill. It only does between like 60 and 75%, I think. Maybe it's 65 to 70 or 80 or so. But either way, I need to make a good pivot here and basically assume that he's going to be going for a knockoff, or Hariyama's going to be going for a knockoff again. So I go Pharaoh. Does go for the knockoff. I'm able to get a little bit of chip damage. I'm just going to try to set up rocks. Luckily, Paralysis comes through there. It's the first time I think a Paralysis has ever been like helpful enough for me to actually get something out of it, I guess. Most of the time I just use Paralysis for speed control and don't actually try to rely on the Parahacks there. But I was willing to let Pharaoh go down to get the chip damage anyway, so I might as well try to get rocks up. Goes for the Fire Punch, takes me out, so now I'm just going to go ahead and go back into Mimikyu now that the chip damage has been there. It's a pretty easy OHKO, thankfully I land. And then Arrow comes in. So at this point, I'm predicting a Defog to be able to let Dragonite come in. With Multiscale intact, it can pretty easily take a Play Rough from Mimikyu, honestly. Like, I'll be able to break the Multiscale, but it's only, like, it's not even going to do like 50% with Multiscale up. So I know a Defog is coming. Unfortunately, like, I make probably the most crucial play of the game by staying in again when I shouldn't have. I predicted a Defog here, so I'd be able to get a Swords Dance and potentially kill with Shadow Sneak. Honestly, after looking at the calc, it wasn't really worth doing that anyway. But because I stay in, she just goes straight for an Iron Head against me and kills my Mimikyu. Shows that she's Life Orb, thankfully. But honestly, I'll go back after this, but I should have just gone hard Zygarde here, because I go Zygarde anyway. So basically, there's 2 times this battle where I should have just pivoted into Zygarde as like a defensive pivot, taking advantage of the fact that Zygarde's bulky as hell and honestly not taking anything from Abandoned Mamoswine anyway. So I don't really need the health on it. I just needed it to kind of come in. But at this point, 1,000 Arrows does between 63 and 75%, or 64 and 75%. So I figure I'm free to just fire off 1,000 arrows and keep this thing from defogging. It of course does not actually die, gets the defog off, and at that point the battle's kind of sealed because now I don't really have anything for Dragonite with Multiscale intact. The plan was basically to have Dragonite come in chipped. I would be able to actually OHKO potentially with Outrage spam at the end of the game. But now I don't really have a plan because I let Mimikyu go down for really no reason when I could have just switched Zygarde, taken a Life Orb, Iron Head like extremely easily. I don't remember how much it does, but it definitely was not OHKOing. And then potentially, depending on the roll from there, I could have even blocked the defog. I obviously end up killing it right here anyway, so it's not like it's not like kill wise it mattered, but just that entire 2 sequence of turns could have been condensed down on my end into 1 turn. Made a good defensive play, and I still could have kept Mimikyu around. So Keldeo comes in now, which is kind of interesting because this shows me that it's likely to it's either, like, I'm assuming it's got to be choiced at this point. I assume Choice Scarf if it comes in so confidently like this. Like, she already knows I'm a Choice Scarf Zygarde at this point because I was able to outspeed. She also knows I'm a Choice Scarf Zygarde because that's the only kind of Zygarde that, like, isn't able to actually kill an Aerodactyl from that range. So I know I have to switch out. I'm predicting an Icy Wind to come in, so I'm just going to go into Hitmontop and try to fire off some Mach Punches or something at this point. I'm pretty torn here because Hitmontop and Swallow are both kind of in a position where they're not like the most useful right now. Like, clearly my win condition in this game is Zygarde, which kind of sucks because she just has Mamoswine there, and a Choice Banded Ice Shard like kills from full. So I basically have to kill Mamoswine with extreme speed at this point. So I'm trying to kind of figure out a way to get it to come in. I can live a hit and just get a hit off so I can kill it. So backtracking, I decided to go into Hitmontop because it has the hardest time coming into anything else. She goes straight for a Specs Hydro Pump and it does 99%. I was actually able to kind of figure out she was Specs because she was actually complaining about a low roll on her end as well right there. We were kind of talking a lot during the battle, but the fact that she actually said that showed to me that she was Specs instead of Scarf, because Scarf didn't actually have a chance of killing with Hydro Pump. Specs was basically a 50-50 chance to kill, or not like a 50-50 chance because this Hitmontop actually had a lot of HP, but it was I remember it being pretty likely to kill, I guess. But the fact that it didn't means that I at least get one Mach Punch off. Honestly, the damage here doesn't really matter, but because she's Specs, I know I'm able to go into Swallow and fire off a Brave Bird. I know I outspeed. Basically, the Mach Punch just meant that I took less recoil from Swallow. It doesn't actually matter here because Mamoswine is just going to come in and Ice Shard. So I'm just going to go for a quick attack and try to get the damage. Unfortunately, because rocks weren't up, Mamoswine's still above 50%. I think Choice Scarfed E-Speed, do I have this calc still open? Let me check it real quick. Because I know I was close when I was running these calcs earlier. Yeah, 27 to 32. So I would have needed probably a Mach Punch hit on this. But obviously because Mamoswine's in, it's just going to Ice Shard me and kill me off. So great battle, Sunny. You played it like pretty much perfectly, honestly. There were a couple of turns that I wasn't super happy with myself, but kind of just rewinding it because I kind of previewed it. Like I didn't really do a good job of like setting up the tension this game, but because this is kind of more just like a review for myself. But going back to turn 10 here, if I switch out into Zygarde, take the Iron Head pretty well, I can go for 1,000 arrows here. It's obviously not super likely to, like, it is likely to kill, but it's obviously not guaranteed to kill. But even if I get that same low roll on this next 1,000 arrows, I would still be able to have Mimikyu here as a sack if I needed. Instead of being able to sack Swallow, I could kind of just go straight into Mimikyu, sack it off, and then go into Hitmontop instead of trying to sack that off against Keldeo. I don't know. There's a couple of different ways I could have approached this end game if I would have played turn 10 a little bit differently. Sunny and I both agreed that turn 10 was probably the biggest turning point in the battle besides the first turn. I don't really, like, I am upset obviously that I missed the 50-50 on the first turn, but to be perfectly honest, like, I can say that it would have been predictable, I guess, for her to go for Poison Z on the very first turn, but like it wasn't at the same time, because I honestly could have just went Mimikyu and took the hit with the disguise, and then it wouldn't have done anything, and then she would have showed me that she doesn't have a Choice Scarf item, and I could have gone Zygarde. I could have just gone straight Zygarde and would have been able to take it. I could have gone AV Hitmontop and been able to take it. So like there were a couple of different options, so the fact that she was able to like just fire that off like turn 1 without regard was pretty cool. And like I'm not gonna hold account or anything for me just being on the wrong side of that play, because it was just a good play on her part. The turn 10 is something that I'm gonna need to do a little bit better going forward. There were a couple of times this game obviously where I don't even really want to say I rushed my play, because I feel like all of my plays like made sense. Like, well, I mean, I guess I rushed my plays because they made sense at the time, but in hindsight they didn't as much. So I guess that's kind of the definition of rushing a play. But I don't know. I thought I played pretty well. It was just a hyper offensive game, and Sunny had the better hyper offense team when it came down to it. I already have like another team build in mind for the next time we battle, if we battle again. I'm trying something new this season where I actually just build 2 teams for everyone. So like I have a second team to play people against if I need to, because my record for rematches is pretty abysmal. So I should have probably used some of the better ideas that I had in that one, I guess, but it's okay. I'm not mad. We start the season with a loss, but honestly it was just a really well played loss. Like or a well-played win by Sunny more than a loss on my part. Because outside of the turn 10 staying in with Mimikyu thing, I don't really disagree with any play that I had. Like, I felt like I gave myself pretty decent tools to win. In the end, like, Snorlax may have been more helpful than Swallow, but she also did bring the dual fighting core, and she later told me that she basically had something on every member of her team for Snorlax. So she, like, clearly she was prepared for it to come anyway. So I don't know, like, honestly, there was just a lot of mind games this week, and Sunny came out on top for that, so I'm not gonna hold it against her or myself or anything. Like, she just won, so good game, Sunny. Please help me win more, I guess. So next week we take on Danny, coach of the Aston Charizards. He's a fantastic coach, so I'm definitely not sleeping on this game. Like, every time we've battled, it's been a stupidly close game that normally comes down to both of us making insane predictions to be able to come out on top over each other. Like, Sunny's probably the coach that's most familiar with me in this league, and I'm probably one of the coaches that's most familiar with Danny's playstyle in this league. So it'll be interesting to kind of see if we can recover next week, I guess. Danny has a very good roster, so like I said, I'm not trying to overlook anyone, but yeah. So thank you guys for coming by for this video. I feel like I've been trying to, like, do an outro for this for like 20 minutes at this point. Obviously this is unscripted, so I guess let me know if I should go back to a script, because I feel like I kind of wandered a little bit this post-com, but it's whatever. I'm trying to space out my, like, enthusiasm for this so I can actually keep, like, the series going the entire time, as well as keep up, like, my team building creativity and stuff. So I'm trying to put a little bit less effort into editing and stuff for this, and hoping it's paying off with okay commentary still. But anyway, have a good day, guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye.